I have one kid. You have 5 kids.
That's what you.
How do you? That's incredible.
It's kind of like being an FBI agent. You're always kind of monitoring them and making sure everyone's safe.
Makes good sense. You know, I'm actually a real agent. I'm not an agent. I'm actually a deputy sheriff.
Are you really?
Right there. Many, many years.
Are you serious?
For real life, real life.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So you're a sheriff.
Yep.
Played at Princeton. Pro football player. Greatest superhero of all time.
Never drafted to Major League Baseball like you with the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Thank you very much.
Knuckleballer. How do you hit a knuckleball?
You don't.
You don't.
You don't.
That's the whole point.
That's the beauty of it. You know, we may have always played on different sides, you know, being the superhero or the supervillain.
Supervillain.
But we have a lot more in common than I thought that we did.
Which is shocking, because one thing's for sure. Genesis Gold Group is a company that we both trust. They make safeguarding your IRA or your 401k as simple as possible. And I need simple,
That's right.
I'll be honest.
And with their stellar reputation, they're as solid as the gold that they sell.
Like this gold right here. So call Genesis Gold Group today at 1-800-200-GOLD.
What is that?
This is what they call a prepper bar. So like you can break off these, see these little pieces? Oh, it's on both sides.
And it's great because you can carry that around small. And
Oh yeah, and you can literally use it to spend.
Or it's not like this one.
What?
This is a big fella. This is a really great one.
Is that real?
This is a real one. You want to hold it? It's heavy.
Holy smokes.
That's pretty great. Yeah, you can get them one of those from Genesis Gold yourself.
Hey, you guys see this? Look, check
Dean,
this out.
Dean, that's my kid's college tuition money. Hold on, I'll be back. Dean!
Yeah. Who's the supervillain now, huh?
Yeah, that's my goal, Dean!
You're listening to the J.D. Rucker Show. Let's begin. The attacks against Pete Hegseth continue. Pete Hegseth is, of course, President-elect Donald Trump's selection appointee to be the next Secretary of Defense. First, they were going after some email. New York Times published some email from his mom, which she had to go on Fox News today to retract. She said she retracted it back then. She said that she sent an email to Pete 2 hours later saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong." Well, they didn't publish the second email, just the first one. The first one where she says, "Hey, you're mean. You're mean to women. You're a player." Or I don't even remember what word she used, but yeah. So there was that attack. Now you got NBC News out there saying they have anonymous sources. Of course, it's always anonymous sources at Fox News, basically saying that Pete Hegseth is a drunk. Don't even get me started. I don't want to, I almost went down the road of downplaying that, because if that was the qualification, then half of the Senate would not have a job. But anyway, I don't want to downplay that because it is a serious concern, I guess, to some extent, if you really want to make it such, whatever. No, but the real issue here is that considering the sources, which we don't know who the sources are, all we know is NBC News, which itself is a horrible source. Considering the sources, there should be 0 Republicans who are even taking this seriously, and yet there seems to be several. Yesterday it was 6. I think it's now up to like 8 or 9 that are actually very concerned. Very concerned. This is a serious allegation. It needs to be looked at. I need to figure it out. Okay, this is the Lindsey Graham caucus of the Senate. Joni Ernst, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, John Thune, Mitch McConnell, and anybody else who actually takes this seriously. You all knew all that, but here's my request, and I really, truly hope that President Trump listens, or somebody near him, somebody in his orbit listens to this, and that he heeds this advice. And hopefully, by the time you're watching this, maybe he already has. But as of right now, he has not. And I think he should. And I don't care if he does it on Truth Social or X or in a video or whatever. He needs to come out and say, number one, he's backing Pete Hegseth. He needs to say that publicly. Number two, he has vetted out. His team has looked into Pete Hegseth. They've interviewed his friends, people around him. They saw no red flags, no concerns at all. And number 3, considering that we are talking about NBC News, one of the premier fake news networks out there, and considering that they will only use anonymous sources, and considering that a plethora of people that know Pete Hegseth extraordinarily well have all come out and said, dude, I've sat with him for hours. It's not true. It's not true. It's not true. It's not true. He's not a drunk. Considering all of that, then, and this message has to come from President Trump or somebody within his orbit. They have to say that, look, any Republican senator that is so stupid that they would actually listen and give any credibility whatsoever to an anonymously sourced report from NBC News, that person does not belong in the U.S. Senate. That person is so supremely stupid that not only should they be removed from the Senate, we should probably consider getting them some sort of help, okay? Because they're clearly a danger to themselves and the people around them. And that degree of stupidity, let's get them a helmet, okay? Kind of maybe get them a straight jacket or something. Get them plopped down on a chair because they're incapable of adult rational thought. Now, there is another option, or there is another possibility, I guess. Maybe they're not stupid, supremely stupid, because that's what it would take for them to actually believe NBC News about Pete Hegseth. Maybe it's not that. Maybe they're just using that as an excuse. Maybe they're compromised. Maybe they're owned by, for example, the military-industrial complex that wouldn't want somebody like Pete Hegseth going in there and ruining their con, their scam. Because it is a scam. It is a con. Pete Hegseth is not the kind of guy that will want to go out there and recommend to President Trump that, hey, we should invade these guys. We should invade those guys. We should send weapons over here, send weapons over there. You think that's possible? That, I don't know, maybe Lindsey Graham is a warmongering neocon who is owned by the military-industrial complex to the point that anybody like Pete Hegseth, who might not actually embrace war as the first option, that they probably shouldn't be in Trump's cabinet. Given the two options, either somebody like Lindsey Graham is supremely stupid and needs to seek help, or somebody like Lindsey Graham and his cronies are actually owned by the military-industrial complex. Given those options, I'm going to put it at 50-50. All right, stop me if you've heard this one. Republican winning in a red district in California. Incumbent. Very popular. Winning by a decent amount after Election Day. But over the course of days, weeks, even a month after Election Day, the ballot counting continues and it keeps going until all of a sudden the Democrats winning and then they say, we won. It happened again. In California, the final House race, it happened one more time. According to Kevin Sorbo, actor Kevin Sorbo, oh, look, they finally found enough votes to flip a House seat. Only took a full month of counting, nothing to see here. And they're referring, of course, to Adam Gray, a former state lawmaker, defeated incumbent Republican John Duarte in California's 13th district, flipping the seat after trailing by 3,000 votes on election night. Not an insignificant amount in the 13th district. This reversal from 2022 gives Democrats 215 seats to Republicans 220, but with Trump wanting 2 House members in his administration, GOP control remains shaky. Those 2 being, of course, Elise Stefanik and Waltz, both of whom will be part of Trump's down to 218. Then you lose Matt Gaetz for at least his seat for a period of time until he's replaced, and you're down to 217, which means 217 to 215, you can afford to lose literally 0 people. 0 Republicans can vote with Democrats in order to get legislation passed. You have to have 100% commitment from the entire Republican Party for legislation to pass. This is not what we voted for. This is not Agenda 47. And it's not fair because I think that this was stolen. I think that based upon not evidence, I don't have videos of them bringing in boxes of ballots like we did in 2020. Not that that helped. Not that mountains of evidence helped back then. But no, I haven't seen evidence. I just look at it statistically. And when you look at it statistically, and when you look at the ballot integrity issues that have been confirmed in the state of California as well as other states, it makes you wonder why it is that whenever they count for long enough in a close race, the Democrat wins 100% of the time. 100% of the time, the Democrat wins in these close races that are determined by ballot drops after the fact. And no, you can't tell me that it's just because, well, they vote late, they mail in their ballots more this year. That you can't say that. That's not the case this year. Okay? Republicans had a lot of early voting and mail-in voting happening for the first time ever. And that's one of the reasons why they gave up, basically, on, they called the presidential election much earlier than they probably wanted to, simply because they realized that there weren't going to be any flips. They weren't going to get any of the battleground states. Well, here, though, in California, where the election integrity laws are, we'll just say they're pretty much non-existent, well, they have the opportunity to take seats. Notice, if the Democrat wins in a close race, nothing's said about it. If the Republican wins in a not close race, nothing's said about it. The only time that this ballot dropping continues, the only time that these counts continue for weeks, even over a month, as in this case, it only happens when it's the Republican leading by a little bit. That's the only scenario. It means obvious to me. But let's say that my opinion about the statistical anomalies or the ballot integrity challenges, let's say that my words are meaningless. Where is the Republican Party? Where's the RNC? Where's the California Republican Party? Why aren't they making a stink about this? And I know everybody's like, oh, Laura Trump is doing wonderful stuff, and Michael Whatley's doing wonderful stuff. And nobody's saying that about the California GOP, but that's a different discussion for another day. But they are saying that they did a wonderful job. They did, but they didn't finish. In my humble opinion, they didn't finish because they should be here. There should be an army of attorneys and investigators here in California watching over everything and finding what happened. I would argue, and I'm not making an accusation about anybody in particular, but I would say that to me, this feels as if there was some sort of backroom deal made that said, we're going to take these seats, nothing to see here, don't push it, don't investigate it, don't call for audits, don't look at video footage, don't look into this. Let us have these, and something good will happen for you. I don't know what that was. I'm not privy to what could have possibly happened in these backroom deals. I just know that it's very fishy. Everybody who's paying attention realizes that it's fishy, and yet zero pushback from the Republican Party. You can blame the Democrats for cheating, and we will. We also have to look at the RNC for letting them cheat. We have to look at the California Republican Party for enabling the cheating to happen year after year after year. All right, let's go across the pond to England and Wales. The ONS over in England and Wales released the 2023 list for most popular baby names for boys and girls. Now, I can tell you that in 2022 and for a little while before that, the number one male baby name was Noah. I thought this was interesting because I've only known one Noah in my entire life outside, of course, of the biblical Noah. I know the gentleman who happens to run 100% Fed Up and WLT Report, great investigative journalist, and he's the only Noah that I've ever known. So yeah, apparently it has been very popular in England and Wales for quite some time. But if you have been paying any attention to what's happening in Europe, what's happening in England and Wales and Ireland and Sweden and pretty much nearly, not every country, but nearly every country in Europe, in the European Union, and of course the adjacent non-European Union areas, you will already know what the punchline of today's story is. Yes, the number one male name for 2023, Muhammad. This nation, England, Wales, these nations, I should say, and pretty much a good chunk of Europe, they are going to be, at the pace that they're currently heading now, they will be Islamic majority nations here in, I don't know how long, but probably much sooner than anybody is anticipating. It's not just migration. The Muslim people they are just much better than the non-Muslims when it comes to procreation. They make a lot of babies. They always have. And that is part of their teaching. Technically speaking, it's part of the Christian and Jewish teaching as well, but seems as if in our woke culture that is far less prevalent. We still do not have nearly as many babies as we should be. We need more people like Elon Musk or me. My wife and I have spent the last 3 decades, got 4 kids. It's awesome. We just every decade we just keep having another one. So who knows? We'll see what happens next decade. See if we get another one, and if we do, it will be a tremendous blessing. We'll be very happy about it. During a segment of my show a couple of months ago, I talked about how my favorite German restaurant of all time, located out here in Southern California, my favorite German restaurant was shutting down, but they made a note. I said, look, we don't think we're shutting down for good, but we definitely have to get things situated and see what the future holds. Now, the hint at the time was that they were waiting to see who would win the election. And ever since the election, I've been waiting to see if their Facebook page announces, hey, we're back, because I will be waiting in line to go see that. We are seeing movement in other restaurants as well. You know, if you recall, I know it seems so long ago, the last couple of months, but if you recall, for the last 4 years, we've seen restaurants shutting down. There's been no expansion. No restaurants are like, hey, things are looking good. Let's go ahead and open up more restaurants. And you haven't seen new endeavors really popping up. Maybe here and there, little restaurants or whatever, but chains, no, not at all. Especially corporations, they have not been making moves in the restaurant industry for the past 4 years, unless those moves were to shut down, right? Well, that's changing, according to an article over at WJAT. Popular Mexican restaurants set to return 20 years after closing all locations. Hormel Foods, who owns the trademark to Chi-Chi's restaurant, Chi-Chi's Mexican restaurant, they worked out a deal to bring them back to life after they closed every location and filed for bankruptcy back in 2004. The company initially closed its doors due to a foodborne illness outbreak that was linked back to them. Now, the son of the founder of Chi-Chi's, Michael McDermott, said in a release that he hopes to honor his family's legacy by combining the classic Mexican restaurant with modern influences. And of course, and no point in any press release or any interview or anything that could even be leaked to employees, let alone the public, would they ever say, hey, we'll make the decision based upon who wins the election. But let's face it, it's been a month since the election. Hormel is a big company. Whether they stated it explicitly or implied it or just kept it hush-hush between themselves, they knew that the decision to open a chain of Mexican restaurants in the United States of America, that the decision would be made based upon who won the election. Again, they won't say it. They would never admit it. You'd have to put some truth serum in them, put them under oath or something to get them to acknowledge it if it was even openly discussed. It could have very easily been assumed. They could have just said, hey, yeah, let's finalize this deal like sometime in November or December. How's that? Wink, wink, In other words, I would argue that if Kamala Harris had won, praise God that she didn't, but had Kamala Harris won, that we would not be sitting here excited and waiting for the next Chi-Chi's Mexican restaurant to open up at a location near us. I would say the vast majority of my audience is very, very hopeful for the future. The election of President Trump has been we're seeing shockwaves. We're already seeing results even at this early stage, but there are still concerns. He can't do everything. He's going to do everything in his vast power to protect us, to protect our nation, to defend the Constitution, to protect our freedoms. But that doesn't mean that there won't be risks, challenges. We're already seeing wars popping up and rumors of wars popping up across the globe. Will he be able to stop all of them? I think so. But what if he can't? What if, for whatever reason, cooler minds, cooler heads don't prevail and we find ourselves in the midst of something tragic? What about natural disasters? What about just the idiocy of the globalist regimes across this planet that are trying to do everything they can to destroy our food supply? They want to control the food, and they want to make sure that we're not eating the good stuff, especially as it pertains to protein, and specifically as it pertains to beef. Beef cows seem to be the main culprit for every boogeyman propagating bad guy out there. As a part owner of an all-American, patriotic, freeze-dried steak company, I am very, very blessed, pleased, and honored to be able to offer my wonderful audience an opportunity to take advantage. If you go to worldviewbeef.com and use promo code JDR, you will get the maximum possible discount. And there are other discount codes out there that are less. It's not like with certain companies where, it doesn't matter which promo code you use. Use JDR. I own the company. Use promo code JDR and get the maximum discount at any given moment at worldviewbeef.com. All American, no mRNA jabs. It's just the good stuff. So check it out, worldviewbeef.com. I know I covered it earlier, but it needs to be said again. Based upon this tweet that I just saw from this morning, Eric Daughtry posted, Justin Trump is eager for details about Pete Hegseth's progress in courting GOP senators for confirmation, according to Politico. He's especially keen on learning more about Hegseth's conversation with Senator Joni Ernst. Now, to be clear, I will say this, that when you hear reports, I don't care if it's Politico, New York Times, Newsweek, NBC News, whatever, CNN, everybody's out there. There's this narrative that, oh my gosh, everybody's against Pete Hegseth. Except you don't really hear much. Joni Ernst, you heard her yesterday. She was like, kind of milquetoast, lukewarm. But then again, she would have to be until she's able to get enough support to tank Hegseth's nomination. I don't think that she will, though. Here's the thing. I also have heard conflicting reports to the corporate legacy media narrative, conflicting reports that basically say Hegseth's not getting pushback from really anybody yet. There are those who have questions, but I am very confident that he will be able to overcome whatever objections they have. Maybe not Joni Ernst, maybe not Lisa Murkowski, maybe not even Susan Collins. But if he can get over everybody else, then he's in. And this is why I ask, and I'm curious, where is Donald Trump? He's, according to that tweet, he's eager for the details from Pete, but this is his guy. He should be out there, and I know, Trump supporters, I am a Trump supporter myself, but I know a lot of Trump supporters are like, you never say anything negative about Trump. Well, I'm curious, where is he on this? Why isn't he going out there? I know that the whole Matt Gaetz thing was embarrassing, but he did try to go to bat for Matt Gaetz. He got on the phones. He made the phone calls. Why isn't he doing that now? Why isn't he doing that for Pete Hegseth? Is it because of the experience that he had with Matt Gaetz? Is it because he really is hoping that Hegseth drops out and he can pick somebody else like Ron DeSantis, God forbid? I'm truly curious. I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you think that Trump is just biding his time, maybe? Seeing how it goes first? Seeing which way the wind is blowing? To me, if Hegseth were my guy, and in many ways he is, not that I don't know him, I'm just saying he's my guy, and that he's one of my favorite picks out of all of them. Okay, he's up there with Kash Patel, RFK Jr. He's up there with some of these people that I really am excited to see what they can do. I think that Pete Hegseth can work wonders for our military just by turning it back into the war machine that it has always been, instead of a woke laboratory. Well, he's the right guy, and I know there are other acceptable options, but here's the thing. The quote-unquote acceptable options can't be that good. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Pam Bondi, so far, not impressed. And it's funny, because one of the reasons I'm not impressed is because everybody seems to like her. All the wrong people seem to like her, and I don't like that. I'm a little concerned that she's probably going to get 20 or 30 or so Democrat confirmation votes, which tells you that they're not scared of her. We're talking about the Attorney General, and why aren't they scared of her? They were terrified of Matt Gaetz. Well, as the left and the uniparty swamp pushes for a replacement for Hegseth, I'm practically begging President Trump to not accept an alternative, to get behind this guy and use your influence over the party to say either play ball or we're going to primary you. Play ball or or whatever. I know, a lot of people out there, especially those who are stringent about abuse of power or separation of powers between the various branches. I wholeheartedly agree, but here's the thing. Right now, it appears that the Senate is abusing their power against President Trump's own nominees. These are the people that the president wants in office with him. And it is the Senate, the Republicans in the Senate, who are saying, no, we don't like Pete Hegseth. What's going to stop him from saying, oh, we don't like Elon Musk? Not that they can affect that, but we don't like RFK Jr. We don't like Tulsi Gabbard. We don't like Kash Patel. The whole reason they're going after Hegseth now is because the Trump team lost on Matt Gaetz. That opened the doors. Now they think, oh, well, let's see who else we can prevent. And they went after Hegseth. And it's a shame. It sucks. Big time. So I'm asking, again, begging President Trump to not sit back and see what happens, to be proactive and aggressive. Make a video saying that Hegseth is your guy and that Republican senators need to get in line. This is the team that you want. And unless they can present an extremely compelling reason why their opinion supersedes the President of the United States about who he can hire to be on his staff, unless they have some bombshell, Joni Ernst pulls out something that shows, no, Pete Hegseth here's proof, definitive proof that he's a communist. He's been meeting with Xi Jinping behind your back. Okay, fine. Show me that evidence. Don't be like, well, as a senator, I'm questioning whether or not, apparently he's been drinking, and apparently he's had some flings with women in the past, and there's a chance that it's like, no, that's not your call, Mr. or Mrs. Senator. Your call is to see, is this person qualified? He obviously is extraordinarily qualified. Is this person ideologically sound? You betcha. I mean, what are they scared of? They're just flexing their muscles. And that should really piss Trump off. Because if he allows this, if they're allowed to subvert Agenda 47, to suppress him, to dictate to the President of the United States of their own party that he's not allowed to have his own staff, they're the ones that are the problem, not Pete Hegseth. All right, this is the last segment on today's show regarding Pete Hegseth, I promise. Unless something happens. I mean, who knows? Something crazy may happen, and maybe Joni Ernst will announce she's come to her senses and she's going to wholeheartedly back Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense, as well as backing all of Trump's appointees. If that happens, then maybe we'll have one more, but this is the last one that I know of. But before I get to it, I have a confession to make. I want you to think back to the 2019-2020 primaries, okay? And in early or mid 2019, when the Democrat field started forming, this is hard for me to admit, but I thought back then that Senator Elizabeth Warren, was intelligent. I know what you're thinking. You're like, Rucker, what are you saying? How could you have possibly thought that? But in my defense, I was just reading some of her statements, looking at her history, and I thought, you know what, she's pretty darn smart cookie. Yeah, I thought she was more like Bernie Sanders, that style of pseudo intellectual, but still intelligent nonetheless. And I thought, she's somebody to be reckoned with. As it turned out, she's, instead of being the female version of Bernie Sanders, she's more like the Senate version of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's a dimwit. She's just not that bright. She might be book smart. I think she probably is book smart, but as far as her instincts, political instincts, or otherwise, they're awful. Her arguments, good gracious, she makes some bad arguments. And one of her most recent ones that she posted over in X is, well, par for the course. According to Elizabeth Warren, in 2023, over 29,000 active duty troops were sexually assaulted, including more than 6 in every 100 women in the military. Many service members never report these crimes. The rates of assaults are estimated to be up to 4 times higher. Pete Hegseth must not be the defense secretary. Now, if you're paying attention, and I know you are, you're thinking to yourself, she's talking about 2023 with Lloyd Austin as the defense secretary, Democrats in charge, Democrat White House. Why is she using that as an argument against Pete Hegseth? Now, the reason I think is self-evident. I mean, we know what she's insinuating here, but let's be clear. Pete Hegseth has been accused of things. Some would argue that those accusations are not credible. Is he a womanizer? I think he is. I think he actually is, or at least was, in his youth. I think that's clear, but that's not somebody who's committed sexual assault. And he has worked with and served with women in the military for a good chunk of his career. We never hear anything about that. As a matter of fact, he has argued that women should not be in combat situations, which I agree with. So for Elizabeth Warren to throw that out there, they are grasping at whatever straw they can. They're latching on to the idea that the leftists are going to think, oh yeah, Pete Hegseth totally looks like a sexual predator, and there were accusations, never charges, of course, but there were some accusations of some weird things, even though those seem to have been pretty well debunked. I guess that he's a bad guy. Not that it makes any difference. So this post is really virtue signaling. It's not going to have an impact on whether or not Pete Hegseth gets confirmed as the Secretary of Defense, which I pray to God that he does. Let's take a short break. When we get back, we got more good stuff, so stay tuned. Well, it is Christmas season. Christmas is back this year after a 4-year hiatus. Under Joe Biden, we are now excited to have an actual Christmas. And if you are seeking the right gift to get, there is one place where you should definitely be shopping, and that, of course, is MyPillow.com. Go to MyPillow.com/JDR. That automatically puts in the JDR code. I believe it does. Double check and make sure that you put in code JDR at MyPillow.com. But they've got specials out the wazoo. Obviously, the classic collection is on sale for as little as $14.88 with promo code JDR. They've got Price Buster this and just great stuff. And keep in mind, when you're shopping for people, a lot of this stuff is truly gift worthy, like the slippers and stuff like that. So MyPillow.com/JDR. Use promo code JDR. Get the maximum discount and have a Merry Christmas. Whether you've been a prepper for a long time, or maybe you're just getting started, you're just looking around and thinking how crazy it is, we usually cover the basics. You get your food, you get your water, you get your ammunition. Don't forget your ammo. You get your battery chargers, solar battery chargers, or whatever. But a lot of times I think people will forget their meds, okay? Whether it's chronic meds, antibiotics, I think a lot of people don't even realize that you can stock up on that stuff. They go to the doctor, they go to the pharmacy, and the pharmacist said, oh, here's your 2-month supply or whatever. Well, you can actually stock up on a lot of these meds by going to jdrucker.com/meds. You'll talk to the good folks over at Jace Medical. They can get you a 12-month supply of certain prescription drugs. They can get you emergency meds, all sorts of good stuff, things that you may or may not need, but it's always good to have it on hand, because I guarantee you, even if you don't think you need it today, you might need it in the future. jdrucker.com/meds. The last 4 years under Democrat rule have really changed me in a lot of ways, changed some of my perspectives. Thoughts that I'd had and stances that I'd had for a long time, I had to shift them a bit, because I can no longer defend those old stances. One in particular, it comes down to antitrust laws, antitrust fights. I want them to be minimized. I really do believe that, with as little government interaction with any businesses as possible. It should be super rare, super blatant that monopolies are being used to harm not just that industry, but to harm America. as well. Unfortunately, with 4 years under Democrats and watching the debacle that they have allowed in big tech has become just horrible. And as a result, well, yeah, I am actually rooting against a company and hoping that government steps in and makes changes. And it's not just one company, unfortunately. In this case, we're looking at multiple. But it appears that somebody who, again, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I never would have supported this person now. We're finding that not only do I support her, but I think that she might be the perfect person. And she's not getting any attention, of course, because it's not exactly a high profile pick by President Trump, but it is an important one. And it's one that could actually have dramatic effects on our day-to-day lives. Article over at newsbusters.org. Big trouble for Google. Trump names fighter to lead DOJ antitrust. And they shouldn't have. I mean, it's fine. I know Google's the big one, but it's not just Google. It's pretty much anybody in big tech who establishes the lion's share of a certain segment of the big tech's various industries or various portions, I guess you could say. I don't know. Subcategories. This is from Tim Kilcullen over at MRC Business for newsbusters.org. Big tech censorship's efforts just hit a huge roadblock. In a statement on Truth Social, incoming President Donald J. Trump announced that he will nominate competition hardliner Gail Slater. Remember that name. Gail Slater to lead the Department of Justice's antitrust division. Trump argued the appointment was necessary not just to preserve the free market, but also to protect American liberties. And that's really what it comes down to. It's not just a matter of oh, look, Google is taking over too much search, and smaller search engines can't compete, and Google has like 88% of all searches. It would be different if their searches weren't so completely biased. And to be clear, even though they're obviously biased to the left, I would be just as against them if they were biased to the right. Biased, I mean, we're talking about literally a search engine that's supposed to give you the best possible results, not the best left-leaning results. It's a distortion, and it affects America dramatically. I mean, it truly does real damage to America, and I mean it's indisputable. I'm sorry, I don't care if you're a leftist. You might say that damage is good, but it's still damage nonetheless. Okay? I mean, I do searches sometimes. Rarely, when I have to use Google, I will do searches for particular stories or particular topics, and the front page is 99% leftist every time. I mean, they don't even try to pretend. They don't try to hide it anymore. The only thing they're trying to hide is anything that's even remotely conservative. And so for that reason, yeah, I mean, they need to be busted by Gail Slater. Again, remember that name. Trump wrote, Big tech has run wild for years, stifling competition in our most innovative sectors and, as we all know, using its market power to crack down on the rights of so many Americans, as well as those of little tech. I was proud to fight these abuses in my first term, and our Department of Justice's antitrust team will continue that work under Gail's leadership. Monopolization and collusion in tech markets often pose direct harms to America's First Amendment liberties. In 2021, just 3 tech firms, Amazon, Apple, and Google, were able to cut off the entirety of America's access to free speech-oriented social media platform Parler. Now, to be clear, Parler was mild at best. I mean, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, quick, send all of the whatever, pick the bad guy, the white supremacists or the Nazis or whatever, fascists, something. Send them all over there, and then they're going to go, get engaged. They're going to be spreading whatever, illegal content of some sort. No, that's not what they were doing. Not even close. I mean, they were just saying, we got to make America great again. Joe Biden sucks. And yet, Apple, Amazon, and Google teamed up and were able to essentially destroy an entire company just because they didn't like their views. In 2022, Google denied access to Truth Social for over 40% of American cell phone users. Yeah, couldn't even access it. They said this app, no good, can't have this app. And as a result, they forced Truth Social to start censoring just to get back on the store. Sorry, but as much as I'm opposed to antitrust breakups, I'm even more opposed to the suppression of free speech. And you might say, but First Amendment doesn't cover, well, no, but they are protected as a company. They've been protected. They've enjoyed protections coming from government. So yeah, they need to play by those First Amendment rules. It's one or the other. You can't have both. Are you a private platform? Are you a government-protected Section 230 entity? Which one is it? Because you can't get those protections and then also stifle people, quash them, censor them. You can't do that. That's not how it's supposed to work. During Trump's first administration, the Department of Justice's antitrust division sued Google for illegally monopolizing the search engine market. The case was decided this year. The court sided with the antitrust division and ruled that Google did indeed violate antitrust law in monopolizing the market for search engines. Originally an antitrust attorney in Ireland, Slater's first job after moving to the United States was for the Federal Trade Commission. She later worked at Fox News, at Roku, and as an advisor to Trump in his first administration. She's currently a policy advisor for Vice President-elect J.D. Vance. Throughout her career, Slater has been a persistent and aggressive critic of big tech firms' anti-competitive conduct and disproportionate market power. Slater's nomination could mark a sharp change in direction for the antitrust division. Under President Joe Biden, the division largely refrained from challenging big tech's market power. Wow, what an understatement. They didn't just refrain from challenging big tech's market power. They encouraged it. They helped them expand upon it because they knew, hey, they got a problem. They could just call Google. They could just call Facebook. They could call Amazon. They could call whoever and get their narrative, their agenda to be more readily available. It's the unfortunate reality is that we as a nation, as a society, we are dependent on technology. And I know that there's a lot of people who aren't, but they don't watch my show because you have to watch my show through technology. Anyway, and I'm not ripping, they don't watch my show, so they're bad. No, I strongly encourage anyone who listens to my show. If you can get completely off the grid, you have the means and the will, the resources to get completely off the grid, disconnect completely, from any technology whatsoever. Not any technology, any tracking technology, we'll say. Yeah, I'm not saying, oh my gosh, you're not allowed to use a blender. Unless it's a smart blender that's sending data, but whatever. You get the idea. No, if I would encourage people to be like that, I'm jealous of those people. So I'm not ripping on that at all. I'm just saying that if you're watching this show, chances are you're watching on a smart TV or a smartphone or a smart this or a smart that, and you're probably watching it on or listening to it on a some sort of tech company, whatever. Biden's, I'm not gonna. You get the idea. So I just want you to remember this name. Remember the name Gail Slater. I don't have a picture of her. Nice lady. She's nice is definitely the wrong word. Tenacious. She's wicked smart. She's tenacious, and hopefully she will be able to rein in big tech. And again, I'm not saying get rid of Google, get rid of Apple, get rid of Amazon, though that would be nice. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying make it fair, not in a socialist way. Just in the fight against those who oppose free speech. Again, I said it before. Let me reiterate. If Google has their monopoly and they are truly an unbiased search engine, I wouldn't care. I would use Google. The fact that they're not an unbiased search engine, the fact that they do change the perspectives, the general perspectives of Americans, based upon how they organize their search, how they credit the left and discredit the right. Sorry, it's indefensible. It's untenable. And as a result, I am glad that Gail Slater is getting the job. One of my favorite types of videos to play on my show is when a real expert teaches a whatever, usually a reporter, sometimes a politician, but teaches them a lesson that dispels or disproves their premise. Generally speaking, it'll be a woke premise of some sort of anti-science, pretending to be this, that, or the other. And yes, a lot of times it does have to do with climate change. That's why this particular video, this is a regenerative farmer. I wish I knew his name, but unfortunately I got this off X and there was no reference to who it was that's talking. But whoever he is, bravo, my friend, bravo. You did an excellent job of taking a woke reporter and telling her the truth, the reality of how regenerative farming in particular should be used. Watch this.
Taking a lot of water. They use 10 bathtubs full of water. Their cow burps, their cow farts, all the carbon that's put into the air, and that they take a lot of land.
When we manage cattle with regenerative agriculture, they're actually the single best way to sequester carbon from the atmosphere into the soil, because by grazing off our plants and bringing the animals in, we're managing a solar panel. Our grass is a solar panel. It needs to be green and growing so it can capture sunlight and pull carbon from the air and put it into its roots. But those plants will stop doing that if they get too tall or if they get too short. And so what we do with our cows is they come in, they graze those plants off, so they reset it, they prune that solar panel so it doesn't get too tall, and then they leave and it rests. And that graze, rest, recovery is actually a cycle of pulling carbon from the air into the plant roots, and then when those plants get grazed, they actually release that carbon into the soil, and in turn pick up water and other minerals from soil microbiological activity, because our soils are living and alive instead of dead and sterilized. And so that cycle actually builds health, and year after year we're pulling more carbon from the atmosphere, putting it into our soil, which then produces more healthy soil, which then produces more grass, which then allows us to graze and produce more cattle. 70% of the Earth's land is land that is not suitable for tillage, which is to say it's inarable. It's just grassland, and you can't do anything else with it. And so if you just say, well, we're not going to do cattle anymore or any grazing livestock, you completely given up the ability to produce food on that acreage, and you've lost your single best tool to actually restore that land. There are groups out there that have done these same principles in the desert and transformed completely desert landscapes into something that looks like just beautiful and lush. It's incredible. Cattle can be a tool to heal that. And in terms of water and addressing that, they do drink a lot of water. However, they're drinking that water and then they're spreading it out on the fields as they graze. That water then filters down through the healthy soil and returns to those same aquifers. And it actually is a system that helps increase soil life and activity, because the cows, by drinking that water and then spreading that water on the fields, are actually like continually watering the fields, and they're not as reliant on rainwater. And so that cycle actually builds health and builds ecology deep into the soil, and there's no net loss of water in that system because it's a closed system as they're grazing and moving along. Even methane, people say, well, they burp and they release methane and it's greenhouse gas. Here in the last few years, has actually discovered that if you take a field that's been regeneratively grazed with cattle for several years, that soil has microbes in it that break down methane. They didn't think there was a microbe that could handle methane. As it turns out, they do, and when they measure the total amount of them, it turns out that the microbes in that soil that support, say, 100 cows are actually capable of breaking down the methane from way more than 100 cows. And it's all how you take care of it in management. They can be a tool of destruction, or they can be a tool of life. It really just comes down to how you care for them.
And then with
the cows, so yeah, truth bombs. I mean, bottom line, truth bombs. Look, God created this world in a way that it is extraordinarily resilient. It is able to replenish itself in many ways, as long as humans don't get too involved. Okay, especially technologically. I'm not suggesting that all technology is bad when it comes to farming, but a lot of it is, especially when we start getting into the chemicals and all the things and weather modification. I mean, we can use the tools. If we just went back to farming the way that it was done, I don't know. I actually literally don't know, 50, 100 years ago, and stopped destroying the land, stop destroying the animals, stop pumping them full of chemicals and spraying them with chemicals and getting rid of the bees or whatever is happening with them. I'm a humongous fan of regenerative farming. Almost all of our food that we get comes from local regenerative farms. And shockingly, it's in some cases not even more expensive than the grocery store. In other cases, it's barely more expensive. And there are certain things where it's like, yeah, that's kind of we're going to skip on that one until the sale comes, honey. But it's amazing because it's very seasonal, of course. So what I found is that by sticking with these local markets, local farmers, local producers, and working with the ones that are specifically regenerative, any way we can, the food is just better. Okay, it just tastes better. It looks better. It tastes better. It is better. It spoils. I mean, it shocks me that I was watching one the other day. Is something, it's bread. I think it was. Yeah, it was bread. They were showing how like this white bread from the store, and they let it sit out for a long time, and it never changed color. It's like, how's that even possible? Or, like McDonald's French fries. I mean, it's just potatoes. You just take the potato and you chop it up and you fry it. We really are trying to push to eat healthier and to know where our food comes from. And I strongly recommend that as much as I can. I know this is a political, cultural, and spiritual or faith-driven show, but I have contemplated many times doing a show about health because, I am, if you couldn't tell, I love food. I really do. And I'm a fan of it. It's more than just, I like to eat a lot. I know I love learning about the food, learning about nutrition, and I am in the process of losing weight too. So there's that as well. I'm getting on in years. This is kind of my last chance really to be able to get out there and exercise and fast whenever possible, and to eat well and eat naturally. And I strongly encourage you, if you're not doing it already, and I know a lot more Americans are doing it today than they were just a couple of years ago even, but learn what you can. Find your local farmers, local producers, and try to buy from them whenever possible. So it's not just supporting you and your body and your health, but it's also supporting your local community. When I'm a huge fan of localization, even from a political and a cultural and a faith-driven perspective. All right, I know I said earlier that was going to be my last segment on Pete Hegseth, but over the break, I did see a report that earlier today, Joni Ernst once again declared that she is currently a no vote on him. Now look, I get it. People are making the claim that number one, she's in the military. She knows what she's talking about. She's on the Armed Services Committee. Yada yada yada. Great. Her role as a senator is to advise and consent. And I noticed that a lot of her replies, because I've been posting about this all over X all day, well, all week really. And I noticed that a lot of the replies were, they're supposed to be co-equal branches of government, the legislative branch and the executive branch. You can't just say the legislative branch needs to forego their duty, their right. I'm not asking that at all, okay? And I don't think anybody is. Their duty, their responsibility in this is to advise and consent. But I don't think people quite, and I'm sure you do, but apparently there's a lot of people who don't understand what that means. Advise does not mean, hey, you should pick this guy, you should pick that guy. No, advise is advising the president regarding their appointees. In other words, if they find information, if they have, hey, Mr. President, I don't know if you knew this, but such and such and such and such. Okay, that's the advise component. They can make recommendations as well, especially if they don't consent. Now, the consent aspect of it, this is the part where it's been turned, for some reason, everything's been turned upside down. Just now, not before, not even last election. There was order, so to speak, right? You had like 70 senators vote for Lloyd Austin, who, even though, yes, he's a general, that's great. I appreciate that. But they didn't go after him. The Republicans didn't go after him for his ideology, and his ideology was clearly woke. Okay, this is the same guy, if you recall, during COVID, he had the full-blown clear face mask and then face mask on top and then the clear face shield and all this other stuff. there were alarm bells. There's always been alarm bells about him, including, this is a guy who had massive health issues, didn't tell anybody. Apparently didn't even tell his boss, Joe Biden. And to be clear, Joni Ernst and many other Senate Republicans voted to confirm him. What is the problem with Pete Hegseth? And you might say, well, but he's a womanizer. He's had accusations, no charges, accusations of this, that, or the other. He was unfaithful. Okay, what does that have anything to do with whether or not he can be Secretary of Defense? You might say, well, it's a character issue. Okay, great. Hearing about character, you can make that argument, fine. I can make that argument, fine. But you're telling me senators are making an argument about character? Give me a break. Stop right there. So then let's get to the actual issue. One of the issues that could be, a damning issue because it could affect his role is the aspect of, he drinks too much. Okay? He's drunk. But here's the thing about that, is that we're talking about rumors from anonymous sources reported by fake news, NBC News. Even Lindsey Graham came out and said, look, I'm not going to make a decision. I'm not going to listen to anybody based upon anonymous sources. That's ludicrous. And that should be the stance across the board. If they want to present evidence, video evidence or otherwise, reports that, he showed up drunk here or there, fine. Then we've got something. We've got real question marks, right? But no, they're talking about anonymous sources from fake news. If these sources were so opposed, so concerned, they would go on the record. You might say, well, that's unfair for you to say. Okay, great. But we can't just accept anonymous sources and make decisions like that. But apparently Joni Ernst is. I don't know what her reasoning is. I sure hope it's not the womanizing thing, because that's cliche. I hope that it is that she's concerned that he's a drunk. But she shouldn't be, because again, we're talking about the least reliable reporting possible based upon anonymous sources that are unwilling to come out and even contact them directly, anonymously even, not anonymous, but not publicly. Certainly they can at least come out, and she could come out and say, hey, I spoke to some of the people. I do have concerns because of this, that, or these things that I heard directly from them, not from NBC News. Yeah, this topic chaps my khakis. That's why I talked about it 3 times today. Because I know what the real reason is. The real reason is that the military-industrial complex doesn't want him. And because they were able to get rid of Matt Gaetz and replace him with lukewarm milquetoast Pam Bondi, they're emboldened. It sucks. It sucks.
I have 1 kid. You have 5 kids.
That's what you have.
How do you? That's incredible.
It's kind of like being an FBI agent. You're always kind of monitoring them and making sure everyone's safe.
Makes good sense. I'm actually a real agent. Well, not an agent. I'm actually a deputy sheriff.
Are you really?
Right there. Many, many years.
Are you serious?
For real life, real life.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So you're a sheriff.
Yep.
Played at Princeton. Pro football player. Greatest superhero of all time.
Never drafted to Major League Baseball like you with the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Thank you very much.
Knuckleballer. How do you hit a knuckleball?
You don't.
You don't.
You don't.
That's the whole point.
That's the beauty of it. We may have always played on different sides, being the superhero or the supervillain.
Supervillain.
But we have a lot more in common than I thought that we did.
Which is shocking, because one thing's for sure. Genesis Gold Group is a company that we both trust. They make safeguarding your IRA or your 401k as simple as possible. And I need simple,
That's right.
I'll be honest.
And with their stellar reputation, they're as solid as the gold that they sell.
Like this gold right here. So call Genesis Gold Group today at 1-800-200-GOLD.
What is that?
This is what they call a prepper bar. So like you can break off these, see these little pieces? Oh, it's on both sides.
And it's great because you can carry that around small. And
Oh yeah, and you can literally use it to spend.
Or it's not like this one.
What?
This is the big fella. This is a really great one.
Is that real?
This is a real one. You want to hold it? It's heavy.
Holy smokes.
That's pretty great. Yeah, you can get them one of those from Genesis Gold yourself.
Hey, you guys see this? Look, check
Dean,
this out.
Dean, that's my kid's college tuition money. Hold on, I'll be back. Dean!
Who's the supervillain now, huh?
Yeah, that's my goal, Dean!